This video will show some of the features of the yarn catalog. Put a draft here that we can play with. And we'll put a little bit of a tie up here. Go to design. And we'll put a few weft threads in. So the default colors are black and white. Black for the warp, white for the weft. Of course, you can take anything from the default palette and you can recolor it, as you probably know, just by selecting it and dragging it. The default palette is at the bottom. You can use the scroll bar to get to additional colors. And the active palette shows what's named. Now we actually erased the white, so if we save this and reloaded it next time, the white would be gone. But this is what's being used. These slider bars you can move if you ever needed to. They're scroll bars, and the one up at top is the active one, so that if you're using a drawing tool, it's going to use that color with the drawing tool. So that's just basic color management. But if we go to the Tools menu and Yarn Catalog, you'll see that there's now commercial lines called Yarn Lines. Look at these tabs at the bottom. There's a Yarn Lines and My Yarns. The Yarn Lines you can't change. We have the default colors in there that we initially have when you open a brand new weft, and then there's a few commercial lines in here. So if I look at Brassard cotton, I can see all the colors that they sell in any of the cotton weights, anywhere from 16.2 to 16.8. So we'll talk a little bit about how to use those in just a moment, and I also want to tell you a little bit about how to develop your own lines. And by the way, on these yarn lines, we only have a few yarn lines in here right now, and we hope to have more of these available in future releases of TempoWeave. So let's say you've got some hand dyes, you've got some stash on the shelf that you don't even know what it came from or things that you want to use. You can create your own lines. The first thing you need to do is do a category. So I can click up here on the little file folder and do New Yarn Category. I can double click this and name it my tinsel, for example. And you can have as many of these categories as you want. You can add a color by clicking this icon. Notice a little twisty here. I can add multiple ones. I can do this, and let's say I want to do green, some green color. I can click the down arrow here and I can select a green if I want to. And I can hit update. Now I have a green. I can do a similar thing here. I can select, or I can go in here and do more colors, and I can play around with it. So I can go through and select the colors. I can do the lightness and the darkness, and you can try to get it to match. I can also hand type over these numbers, the RGB value, red, green, blue. I can put more red in it and see how it looks. I can put less green, either by using the arrows, or let's put that down to 80 and see what it does. It's kind of fun to play with. I want to tell you about one thing though to be careful of. This will allow you to change the opacity field to 0. Or depending on how you open this, it may start out at 0. Notice this number here corresponds to this slider. You want to leave that at 255 because other weaving software on the market does not use the opacity field. So if you set yours to something other than 255, it won't look right in other weaving software. So I always leave that at 255. So when you hit OK, it saved that. Now clearly that's not blue, so if I want to rename it, I can call that plum. If you want to, you can put yards per pound in. You can also impact the order by putting an order value here. So that's how you do the My Yarns. I can do another category. I don't have to rename the category. Old wool, something silly. Add some more colors. I press that multiple times. I can go in here and tweak my colors. And if I want to, I can just type 100, 110, 80. Wonder what that color is. So that's how you get your colors in. A word of warning, be sure to save your work. Save your catalog. If you don't, it will not warn you and it will not be there. So the yarn catalog that you develop here is yours for any design that you can use, and it persists. It won't get erased on the next release of TempoWeave. So it stays there and is available to you. If you decide you don't like a category, I can click on a wool, I can press delete. Are you sure you want to delete it? Yes, it's gone. So that's how you maintain my yarns. Now let's talk a little bit about how to use those yarns. There's a couple of things that you can do. If you're wanting to use a new palette, a lot of times what I will do is just go in here and clear the palette. So if I hit clear palette right now, I just erased all of those default colors, and the only thing I have left is what is in my active colors. So then I can take this green and I can right click on it and say add selection to palette. It's now available for me to select. See it there in the palette. Another thing I can do is I can take this, I can select plum, I can also select goldenrod, and then I can right click and say replace selection. Now look what happened. It replaced my goldenrod with my plum color. So you can use the same thing on here, like if I wanted to put select stone, I'll select the anywhere that plum is used, right click, well actually I was changing that, right click over here and say replace, and now it's recolored it as stone. And when I hover, you can see I've replaced it with a Broussard cotton. So notice you can use a combination of the commercially available yarn lines and your yarns, doesn't matter. You can add them to your palette. So to review, you can clear the palette and then you can replace. We've been showing the replace, so I want to put this back to plum from the My Yarns palette. I'll click that. I'll go back here and do replace, and now it's back to plum. So let's suppose that we want to add an entire palette, entire yarn line to the palette, and this could be one of My Yarns or one of the commercial yarns. So if I want to say notice I selected Broussard cotton. If I do add selection to palette, are you sure you want to replace it? Yes. So now it adds all the Broussard cottons into my palette. Let's do clear palette again, and I'll show you something else you can do. So if you want to select a range of colors, notice this right here, I'm going to hold down the shift key and I want to pull in these neutrals. I'm going to right click and say add to palette. Now I have these neutrals that I've selected in the palette. See these? Those are the ones that I had selected. Those are just normal Windows tools using the shift or the control key. You can select either individual colors to add or arrange. Different things you can do to add to the palette. Let's go to project and pull up, let's do project information and color information. So the colors that I have used, they're there. Those are from My Yarn lines, what I named them. Those color names are in there. So if I go back to, let's say yarn catalog, and I want to put this to, let's say charcoal. Let's do something else. Let's do Scarlet Rouge. And we're going to, let's see here. I'm going to move this down. I'm having trouble seeing it. So I'm going to take my plum. I'm going to select that. I'm going to select my Scarlet Rouge, right click, and I'm going to replace it. So now when I go to my project, and I go to color information, I see that it's Scarlet Rouge. You can also see the RGB values there. I think if there's something else, there are a few other things that I can do with this. Some people like to actually take this and copy the selection to my yarn. So I can take all of the Broussard cotton and copy the selection to my yarns, or I can take a few of these. For example, if I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to take these colors. I'm going to right click and say copy selection to my yarns. Now let's go to my yarns. And notice it says copied from yarn lines. Now I have these colors that I just selected, and I can rename this, and maybe this is my Broussard purples. I'm not sure they're really purple, but it's good enough. And so now in my yarns, if I save this, that's in my yarn catalog, and that's available for me anytime I do a weaving design. So again, what I did was I selected arrange from the yarn lines, right-clicked, and then just added to my yarns. And you can do that for an individual color, copy selection to my yarns. If you do that, then it's got that. And you can move it. Then I can delete that category it just created. So there's a lot you can do with this if you choose to be very organized about the colors that you have in your stash. So hopefully that helps. Helps you know a little bit more about how to use the yarn catalog in TempoWeave.